Average Americans are in desperate need of another stimulus check and more support from the government since coronavirus obliterated the economy. I mean, that's what happened. For regular people, they're really reeling at the moment. But Republicans, totally disconnected, right back to their same old tricks. Senate Budget Chairman Mike Enzi, Republican of Wyoming, on the Senate floor right now, calling it, quote, critical for us to get a hold of our debt and deficits. Long speech about potential dangers of inflation. Mike Enzi was not concerned about the debt and the deficit when he voted for the 2017 Republican tax cut bill, which 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%. That added $2 trillion to the deficit. He didn't say Dickie McGee's axe. He supported it. He supported adding $2 trillion to the deficit. Supported it. He didn't care about it then. Did he care about it? Mike Enzi probably supported every single Pentagon budget. And those things are bloated beyond imagination. We spend more money on our military than the next 10 biggest nations combined. Insanity. This is imperialism. This is the world's sole superpower being a bully internationally. He supported that. I didn't check, but I'm sure he supported at least some of the coronavirus bailout bills, which were fully implementing corporate socialism and giving corporations everything they could ever want and letting them loot the Treasury, and the Federal Reserve also with $1 trillion in liquidity every day propping up the marketplace. I didn't hear Dickie McGee talks about the debt and the deficit when that happened. But now that people are so desperate and they're begging Washington, oh my God, I need another stimulus check. Oh my God, I need more relief. Oh my God, I need you to extend unemployment benefits. All of a sudden, the debt and the deficit, bro. What are we going to do? The inflation and all these problems and stuff, bro. Let me explain something to you guys. When there's a giant economic downturn, the overwhelming majority of economists agree now, because of history, that the government needs to step in and be the spender of last resort. Because if you decide to embrace austerity when you hit an economic downturn, it will exacerbate the crisis. It will exacerbate it. So that's why, there are two things that help get us out of the Great Depression. Number one is the New Deal. Number two is World War II. And those things required massive, colossal government spending. That's how we got out of the Great Depression. That's how we got out. When you look at the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession, now, you could argue we never really got out of that because there's still some terrible lingering effects and income inequalities through the roof. But the bailout of General Motors and the stimulus spending, the Community Reinvestment Act, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was the bailout of General Motors and it was the stimulus bill, which were most necessary to help us fight back against that recession and at least dig us out when you look at some nominal indicators, like unemployment, for example. So whether they're left-wing or right-wing economists, most economists agree, modern monetary theory economists, Keynesian economists, they'd all say, well, obviously when there's a downturn, you got to spend. What's Mike Enzi doing? He's embracing the fringe Austrian belief that just cut spending because the debt and the deficit are so important. Well, if you cut spending when there's an economic downturn, you will turn a recession into a depression, or a depression into a Great Depression, or a Great Depression into a Great Depression. So, interesting how, and this is the most important point, Mike Enzi and nobody else said, don't do the bailout of the corporations. Don't do the coronavirus bailout bill, the first ones, the early ones, right? Nobody said, whoa. Everything will be fine if you don't bail out the corporations. No, they all agree. We got to bail out the corporations. What are you talking about? The entire economy will freeze up. Everything will implode on itself if we don't bail them out. Why is it they understand the logic for corporations, but never for the people, ever? Guys, 40% of small businesses are on the verge of bankruptcy. 32% of Americans missed a housing payment in July. People who are still employed are taking giant wage cuts, too. So you knew, let's bail out the corporations and let's spend to do endless war, but never for a UBI, for example. Never for nationalizing wages. Never for Medicare for all. It's incredibly selective how they view this stuff. It turns out Mike Enzi, like the rest of them, he takes money from corporations. So that's why when the going gets tough, or even when the going does not get tough, he's still like, yeah, go ahead. Take whatever money you want. Whatever money you want. Loot the treasury for all I care. Subsidy, bailout, welfare check, whatever you want to call it. It's all yours. But for people, no. What about the debt? What about the deficit? What about inflation? What about this? What about that? Listen, guys. There's still a lot more that needs to be done. You know, everybody knows I'm a bigger proponent of, I probably wouldn't have done the corporate bailout, but I would have bailed out the people early on. That's what I would have done. And these guys have the exact opposite philosophy because they're incredibly corrupt and they're stupid and they're backwards and they rationalize everything after the fact. Like, I'm sure he actually has convinced himself, he's drunk the Kool-Aid enough to think, like, no, that is the right thing to do. Oh, is nearly 30 million people about to go homeless? Is that going to happen? Okay, well, how about we don't help them because something debts and deficits, and I read one Austrian economics book in my life, and that's what I'm going to say. These people are representatives of us, and they don't represent us. They're supposed to represent our will, and instead they're actively working to harm us at a time like right now when there's a pandemic and a depression. It's really terrifying.